You must say, fuck that noise. You cannot allow yourself to say that I'm too old ever again. I don't care if you're 98 and you know that you have 15 seconds left to live. Don't buy into the myth that you're too old, because that is going to slow you down. There is a quote that haunts me to my core, which is, genius is a young man's game. Why is genius a young man's game? Part of it is definitely energy. Part of it is the naivete of the beginner. But part of it is just that as you get older, you become dogmatic. You start saying like, I'm too old. You start buying into the myth that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. The reality is your brain remains plastic until the day you die, meaning you can learn new things. The human animal is designed to learn. That's what we are designed to do. When you're younger, it's easier. You learn at a more accelerated rate. I'm not denying that. But if you lose sight of the fact that you really can learn it at any age, and by the way, as you get older, you have wisdom, you have better tools for learning. So there's an efficiency to learning that is not present when you're young in terms of tools and tactics that you definitely have when you're older. And so you also have more will, more drive, more reason. And so if you can manage your energy on both a psychological level, because your psychology is going to have a huge influence over the neurochemistry that you pump. If you've ever put on a good song and that energy fills you up, that song got you hyped, you secreted dopamine, and now you felt more alive.
Need motivation? Watch a top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Carmichael, and I make these videos because in my first business, I quit on my business partner. I was making $300 a month, and I didn't have the motivation to keep going. And the thing that got me through was studying the stories of entrepreneurs who've had massive success. And I hope that in sharing these stories with you, you find a motivation to keep going. And if I'm being honest, I still need the stories for myself today too. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Tom Bilyeu, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy.
The problem is, as you get older, you try things, you find the things that work, and the world of things that the young people are trying, which is why they don't know what the fuck is going to work, so they're trying everything, begins to narrow until you're like, here's that narrow bandwidth of shit that actually works. When you get there and you think you're at the pinnacle, you are f***ed, my friend. That is how people get trapped by being old. You've got to discard all that and say, I'm going to try things. Maybe it didn't work in the past, but maybe it'll work now. Read voraciously, find new ideas, put them to use. If you learn something, use it that day. Push yourself to get better, to get faster, to learn new things. Reading, podcasts, YouTube videos. I am insatiable in my appetite for knowledge because I am always shocked. One, the world is learning new things. And two, I'm discovering new things that interact with my wiring, right? We all have about 50% hard wiring, so we are not blank slates. So it's interacting with the unique way that I think about things, but it's also interacting with the things that I've learned, the current climate of what's happening and all that. But if you're not taking in new ideas, then you can't get new ideas out. So I used to have this formula that hung over my desk, and it said, ideas in equal ideas out. You've got to voraciously get those ideas in. So that noise about being too old. That is a self-defeating way to think about it. Never, ever repeat disempowering like I'm too old ever again. And then go out there, learn to code, become the greatest coder that ever lived. You're 98, you got a long ass beard, and you code better than anybody else, and God only knows what the language will be then, but you're gonna beat these young whippersnappers. And if you maintain that idea, my friend, you will stay mentally supple and you will dominate. Dominate, I say. So get after it. You can learn. Anybody can.
Rule number 2, stay focused.
One of the coolest quotes I've ever heard in my life is, don't sell out what you want most for what you want right now. And I think that is a quote to live by right there. So that's the big one, is really making sure that you are focused and excited about what it is that you want long-term. And even just having a phrase that you can say to yourself about what it is that you want most, I think would be hugely beneficial. So often people don't have that level of clarity. So when we're talking about procrastination, just the raw desire to actually see something through to the end is going to be critically important. Now, the rest of what we're talking about is very mechanistic, but I want to go through it. So first of all, anything that's disrupting the rhythm of your day is going to be wildly problematic. I will answer the question assuming that there's just absolutely nothing you can do about that, but I want to sneak in a quick little answer for anybody else that finds themselves in a similar situation. If there's any way for you to get out of the situation where you are constantly having the rhythm of your day disrupted, I highly encourage it. So we're about to go through how you can regiment the chaos. But first and foremost would be to not find yourself in the chaos to begin with. And that really does matter in terms of when I think about my own life and trying to be as deadly efficient with every single moment that I have. Eliminating disruptions is a big one. Okay, now assuming that you can't eliminate the disruptions, then you're going to need to start building some rules into your life so that any moment where you have, let's say, that rule might be if I have any consecutive 3 minutes where I know 3 minutes are available, then I'm going to immediately do X. Now that X might be journaling. So you keep something like Evernote on your phone and you have a topic preordained, something you already know that you're going to do. And whenever you have a gap, because look, some gaps just aren't going to be worth it. So if I had a 90-second gap, I may not fuss with it. It's going to take 20 seconds just to get your phone out and get the app open and have it refresh and all of that. But if you're really hardcore and you say anytime where I have a 3-minute stretch, then I'm going to make sure that I immediately begin doing something that's productive. A big part of making limited windows like that productive is the following. So first and foremost is having an important things list. And by having that important things list, you're going to be able to immediately slide into knowing exactly what you should be doing so that you don't spend the 3 minutes just trying to figure out what it is that you're going to do. So you're going to have that important things list. You're going to know exactly what you should be doing. You're going to build in some minimum amount of time where you say, anytime where I have this amount of time or more, I'm immediately going to dive into one of the things on my important things list. Now, important things list shouldn't all be just these gargantuan things that require hours and hours of time. You want to make sure that you have things that you can do that are long. You want to make sure that you have some things that are medium, and you want to make sure that you have some things that are short. And when you have that, now you can begin slotting into those. Some of what you may be doing in the short may be researching something, learning more about, so you're talking a lot about film and TV. So I can just tell you right now that I have a YouTube playlist, which I also curate ahead of time. So anytime I've got a brief window, it's what I call transitional moments where I immediately pick up my phone, take it out, go into, let's say, screenwriting. Boom, I've already got 20 videos that are just going to autoplay, so I don't even have to select the next one, curate it on that playlist. Boom, I started going, and now I'm researching. Another thing that I can do in very limited windows of time is I have specific stories that I'm going to be journaling on, and I might journal for a minute. I might journal for an hour, depending on how much time I have. But every second that I spend working on that, I'm able to eke a little bit more productivity out of it. So that's huge. You're going to need to make sure that you get sleep. That's going to be really critical. And then you need to prioritize things in your life. You mentioned your wife. So for me, my wife is number one. Now, not in terms of time allocation, but in terms of importance. So when I know that there's any friction there, I'm going to deal with that first. When there's, I need to capture joy or something to really reaffirm the relationship and make sure that it is this beacon of joy and hope in my life, I'm going to do that. So putting your values in life in ranked order is going to be critically important to you.
Rule number 3, keep your motivation up.
Motivation comes in waves. That's the most important thing to understand, and that's just neurobiology. So that's true for everybody. Motivation is, it is a very complicated cocktail of beliefs, of excitement, thinking about, what you're going to achieve. It is how your calorie count is, how much sleep you've gotten, all of these things bundled up. And so it is inevitable that sometimes you're really going to feel it and sometimes you're not. I am blown away that you were able to get a 70-day streak. Most people will go their entire lives and not be able to string something like that together. So some of what we're going to be doing to get you back in that space is to remember what it was that had you stoked in the beginning. So a big part of motivation is always about actually wanting that thing at the end of the rainbow. So what is your pot of gold? What is the thing that made you want to do this in the first place? And so when it comes to working out, personally, I absolutely hate working out. So I understand anybody that has motivation for a minute and then ends up burning out. I get that so much, I can't even begin to tell you. So here are the things that I do to make sure that even as these sort of ebbs and flows go of my motivation, that I stay on track. Number one is making sure that you want that thing at the end, that you're actually excited about that. So you've got to be honest with yourself about what it is that you want. So often, people are judging themselves for what it is that they want, that they don't double down on focusing on that thing. So let's say that you just want to look good when you're naked. And that is the God's honest truth about what is getting you excited about this. And what you're going to want to say is, this is about longevity. I just want to be healthy. I want to be, my best self. But in reality, you're just thinking about six-pack abs, washboard stomach, or the way you look when you catch yourself in the mirror, whatever is real. Or if you're like me and you're a psychopath about wanting to live forever, and that really is the thing that motivates you, then lean into that. But don't let other people's judgments about what you should want color what you actually want. So that's the beginning. Focus on what is it you really want? What is it you really care about? Grab onto that, focus on that, start fantasizing about that again, spending time thinking about what it would be like to actually have that. Because you said a word in your question that I want to take exception to, which is that you want to find your motivation again. You don't find motivation, you build motivation. So we're going to build that motivation back up by admitting what we really want, by focusing on it and getting hype about it. And then we also want to find a way to really fall in love with the process. So what is it in the moment, in the act of actually working out that you can get into? Is it the getting stronger? For me, that was huge, like knowing that I was getting stronger and I needed to associate something with that. You want to have a self-narrative around showing up and doing this thing when you know other people can't, they won't. During COVID, during lockdown, they're getting worse, they're getting weaker, you're getting stronger, you're getting better, and people are so weird about competition. But my friend, let me tell you, one of the most controversial posts that I posted recently, which I did not expect to be controversial, was that I was talking about business, but I said this is a competition, which is patently self-evident in my opinion. But being willing to compete with others and to have a self-narrative around striving and pushing and doing more than other people are willing to do, that will feed your soul in a way that I can't convey. And people that are afraid to compete, people that are afraid to lean in, people that are afraid to make huge demands of themselves, they will fall by the wayside to the people that can have that discipline, that get excited about pushing themselves, being accountable, being consistent. Because ultimately, those things lead to an actual outcome, meaning you actually do get stronger. You do get better. You look better. You have better longevity, better stamina, whatever it is, whatever that thing is that you're motivated by, you really can achieve that. But you have to be consistent. Now, I got motivated just answering your question. So I'm very hopeful that that motivated you as well.
Rule number 4, commit fully.
The big thing, and this is why I always tell people, there need to be two things true about the goals you're trying to accomplish. One, they need to be honorable, and two, they need to be exciting. So we'll set honorable aside for a second and just focus on being just absolutely committed out of enthusiasm to accomplishing your goal. And this has been one of the things that's propelled me the most in my career, is that I legitimately am excited about the thing that I'm trying to build. And because I value myself for the sincere pursuit of this thing that is both exciting to me and honorable, in that it's, going to lift people up if I actually accomplish it, and I'm holding myself accountable to actual results, but the game, which is the right way to think about it, the game of trying to turn my potential into usable skills that can do something tangible in the world to make that goal that's exciting and honorable come true, because all of that game is predicated on making sure that I love the time in the field, that I'm leaving everything out on the field, and I value myself for that. I don't value myself for accomplishing it, but I value myself for actually trying to pursue it. So now you can imagine I'm saying this stuff to myself all the time. So the weekends are fun and I do wife-oriented things, and I'm doing, like in your case, I would be doing the things that are oriented around my kids, and I would love it, and I would have work shut off in my mind, and I wouldn't be trying to work double duty. On the weekends, I would be with my kids. And then during the week, I'm going to be focused on that goal that I want to be focused on. Now, here is the catch. If your value system is such that family time is far more important and exciting to you than work time, you may want to reevaluate your goals, because it may be that you're trying to convince yourself to pursue something Monday through Friday that actually doesn't resonate with you. Now, if that's true, you've got a couple different options. You can either Find a way to make the stuff that you want to do with your family, for your family, that skill set. You can find a way to make that a big part of your Monday through Friday so that it feels like more of a continuation of the week. It may not be playtime, and I get it. Everybody has to eat and pay your bills. And so you're going to have to find something to monetize. But there are often things, what I call universe of. So if family time, quality time with your kids, that's a skill set that you want to be extraordinary at. What's a way where you could be in the universe of that skill set, those things during the week, so that you saw a direct correlation between what you do during the week and then that thing that really matters to you, which is your family time on the weekend. So it could be pursuing a degree in psychology. It could be working at a daycare. It could be teaching. I don't know in what way that to you is sort of the deep passion, but that's another way to approach this. There's no right or wrong goal. There is only a goal that is both exciting and honorable and gets you amped on Monday so that the way you're pursuing it through the week is exciting to you and you don't feel like you're living for the weekend. And that's where people are often falling apart, is their Monday through Friday is a should thing. It's I should want this, I should pursue this, instead of being a continuation of just the things in life that they love. And the way that I've tried to structure my life is such that on the weekend, other than spending time with my wife, the most exciting thing that I can think of to do are the fun parts of my Monday through Friday. That's how much I enjoy what I'm pursuing and what I'm trying to build. Is that, sure, there's overhead. Look, I will say that my work life is comprised of 60% overhead, meaning things I don't want to do, and 40% things I do want to do. But that 40% is so much fun, and the 60% serves that 40% so well that on the weekend, I can pull from that 40% and just be energized and feel wildly enthusiastic. That is the best way that I could spend my totally free time. And that is a sign that you've got things aligned. So that would be my encouragement. If you find yourself having a hard time revving back up, it tells me that you figured something out on the weekends that you haven't yet figured out during the week. Find a way to align them.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5, push yourself.
Being an artist right now, this is like the best possible time to have something that you can do by yourself, that you can improve on by yourself, that's ultimately going to have real world consequences for you when we get to the other side of this. So here is, and something tells me that if you're playing professionally, you already know this, but here's the reality about greatness. Greatness is about doing the things that are tragically boring and that you have to repeat over and over and over to get better at them in a deliberate way. You don't just want to repeat them blindly, but in a deliberate way, buckling down and doing the things like, for a musician, playing your scales, practicing your improvisation, practicing your cold reading, all of the things that are very easy to put off when you have a job and you're busy and you're making a living. It's kind of like typing. What they find is most people sort of, their typing rate, if I remember right, it's like 65 to 70 words per minute, is where most people tap out. But I think the record is somewhere around 250 correct words per minute. So if the average person is tapping out around 65, but the delta is all the way between 65 and 250, you begin to see like how far you can really push yourself. But people get to a level that they deem acceptable and they just sort of stop there. But because everybody is being forced to shut down right now, if you're a musician and you're saying, look, I'm not worried about streaming and going live and all of that, which I think there's a whole question to be answered about doing that and about how you could generate even more revenue by going online. But you asked me to set that aside, so I'm going to set that aside. But right now is that chance to embrace a level of boredom that most people are not willing to push through in order to get to greatness. So in a business context, I always tell people boredom kills more entrepreneurs than anything. It kills more entrepreneurs than fear. Most people, they just can't slog through sucking at something and sitting in the discomfort that you get from doing the things that you're not good at long enough to get good at even those things so that you can truly go out and create art. Because I don't think you can create real art until you've mastered the basics to the point where, as Bruce Lee said, you don't think kick, you just kick. And I love that quote. And there's another Bruce Lee idea, which is, I don't fear the man who knows 10,000 kicks. I don't fear the man that does 10,000 kicks one time. I fear the man that does one kick 10,000 times. And that is this moment. And if you can take this downtime and let go of how good it feels to perform, I have to imagine a big part of the reason you got into this and that you did all of the work when you were younger to get good is because you love performing so much. But right now, that's basically off the table. So if in this moment you can buckle down, be disciplined, set your sights on something very specific that you want to get good at, disciplined practice at that thing to get good at this. On the other side of this, you're going to be far more extraordinary than you were when you went in because you no longer have the distractions of the actual performance. You can just get down to practicing. So flip that switch in your mind and think all about coming out the other side of this, a beast, an absolute monster, better than you went in. And if you can tell yourself that story, I'm committed to this, I'm willing to do these things that other people aren't willing to do, and put in the practice and understand as you're going through that unimaginable boredom, that on the other side of this is a skill set that has utility, then this becomes an extraordinary time. But if you keep telling yourself the story that so many others are telling, which is this is, a time of deprivation, it's just lamenting that you're not able to perform and all the things that made you love music in the first place, then just because you're repeating that, it becomes a dark time. Focus on the other side and you will get through this amazingly.
Rule number 6, set your goals.
There is a metric ton of uncertainty right now. There's no two ways about that. But you get to control how you spend your time. So when you think about making the most of this time, if you allow yourself to get overwhelmed by the uncertainty, then you're going to be paralyzed and you're not going to make good use of this time. Versus if you know what you want to be accomplishing, you know exactly what your goal is. You know, hey, 6 months from now, I want to be doing this. A year from now, I want to be doing this, whatever. You can't control what happens to the world. So literally shut that out of your mind. Build the skill set that you want to build that allows you to do the things you want to do at the end of 6 months, a year, 18 months, 2 years, whatever that is, however far out that you're looking. Skills have utility. Decide what that skill set is. And now we're going to spend the time building that because that is something that we can control. We can go in and we can get good at that thing. Now, when you're in the process of getting good, hitting plateaus is absolutely unavoidable. What you want to do is figure out what is it that's beginning to break down. So if you're a violinist, what is it? Do you have a hard time reading music? Cold reading? Do you have a hard time with the finger positioning? Do you have a hard time with changing tempos? Like whatever is the weakness that makes you feel like you've plateaued, you have to identify what the difference is between where you are and where you want to be. Now, oftentimes that's identifying somebody who's better than you and saying, why are they better than me? And not like in a judgment about their worth or anything like that. Just what is it that they do better than me? And then begin to dissect it. Look, there is quite literally, much to my dismay, nothing that as of today I'm the best in the world at. Now, it drives me crazy when people do this. Sure, I could sub-segment things far down enough to say that, I'm the best person recording podcast answers from the hours of 4 p.m. to 4:07 p.m. in the zip code, of whatever. Sure, but as of right now, at a macro level, there is nothing that I am trying to be the best at that I'm actually the best at. But I don't let it damage my self-esteem to stare nakedly at my inadequacies because my self-esteem is built around entirely being the learner, acknowledging where I'm lacking, right? Lacking in the sense of there's a gap between where I am and where I want to be. That's the lack, self-defined. And I'm willing to stare nakedly at that and say, cool, this person up here is better than me. I want to beat them. I want to get better than them. But I also need to acknowledge what they're better than me at. Now, can I just get better than them at that thing? Do I need to find a separate thing for me to get good at, right? So if I were trying to play basketball, I'm not going to try to beat LeBron James in a one-on-one. He has physical attributes that I think it would be next to impossible for me to counter directly. But there are other things that I might be able to get good at. I might be able to read the court better. I might be better at passing. Who knows? But you go and identify given the 50% of me that's hardwired that I can't change and the 50% of me that is malleable, how do I bring the reality of those two things together in a way that allows me to perform at the level that I want? So you've identified what it is you're underperforming at, and now you're going to go into deliberate practice. So there's a book by Anders Ericsson called Peak. In that book, he breaks down the process of deliberate practice, of how you take the things that you're not good at, not the things you already are good at, which is what most people will tell you. Lean into your strengths. That's some bullshit. You, yes, know what your strengths are. Yes, leverage them whenever you're in a performance situation and you have to outperform. But when we're talking about practice, we don't want to lean into the things that we already do well. We want to systematically break out the things that we're not good at and find a way to do a practice cycle, a repetition cycle that allows us to actually get better. This is not blind repetition. This is strategic repetition designed to give a desired outcome, whether it's being able to reach music faster. You're going to have to be able to measure this stuff. So figuring out what it is, finding a way to measure it, finding a way to break down the practice elements into steps so that you get better at one small thing, which stacks on another small thing, which stacks on another small thing, until you're actually bringing all of these small things that you have practiced religiously, diligently, deliberately to get better. And now when you go back to perform again, you're able to perform at a higher level. So not accepting a plateau is a big part of it. Not thinking, well, when I've hit this plateau, that just is what it is and I've reached the limits. I can pretty much assure you, nobody is ever going to reach the limits of their capabilities before they die. There just isn't enough time. So breaking it down into those smaller pieces that stack, practicing the things you're bad at, grouping it back together, and then going out to perform, and not letting yourself get overwhelmed by the uncertainty. That is the answer.
Rule number 7, define your rules.
The thing that I love is that you're using the word build, because that's exactly what we're going to be doing here. You're going to construct what you want your life to be. You're going to break it up into different hours and segments so you know when it's go time, and then you're going to build rules into your life that mandate that you show up during those times. So I have a whole host of rules in my life. They can be small, simple rules like I get out of bed in 10 minutes or less. They can be more profound and impactful rules. And I have a rule in my life where Monday through Friday, if I'm awake, I'm either working or working out. So if I were doing something like you in this situation, I would say, okay, these 2 hours or 5 hours, however much time it is that you want to allocate to the business, you're going to say, I am working on the business during these times. I'm going to tell myself, I'm going to tell other people. That way there's accountability. Then I'm going to score myself at the end of that session. Did I show up? Did I start when I said I was going to start? Did I go hard the whole time? And I'm just going to give myself a rating every day, depending on where I'm going, how I did that day. Was I distracted? Did I have flow? Was it a great day, a bad day? And by doing that, I'm going to hold myself accountable so I can see over time, did I show up when I said I was going to show up? What was the score that I gave myself for staying focused, staying on task, and getting things done? And then the third thing, to really make this stick, you've got to find a way to be excited about what you're doing. And oftentimes when people come and they say that they're having trouble making a new habit stick, the reality is they just don't want it badly enough. And when you realize that that's not an indictment on you as a person, that's a simple statement about the fact that desire is a process. So there's very few things in your life that you just sort of automatically are excited about. Most of the things, if you really want to kick ass at something, you've got to build a ton of energy into getting excited about that thing. Now, that comes in a couple different forms. Number one is your why. Why are you doing this? So it might be, hey, my husband and I were really excited about this. This is going to be our path to freedom, and building something with him, like this means everything to me. And I couldn't be more excited, more honored to be working side by side with my husband to build something, to show each other what we're capable of, to take care of each other, to, give ourselves what we need to build a family, whatever. You're going to make that why. You're going to say it. You're going to say it with enthusiasm. It's what I call embodying what you want to feel. So if you want to be excited, when you're telling other people, when you're even talking to yourself, when you're talking to your husband, you're actually going to let yourself get hyped up. There's a mechanism in the brain that says, whoa, hey, we're all hyped up about this. It must actually be worth being hyped up about. And it becomes a self-reinforcing loop. So we've got our why. And then we want to make sure that we're putting the identity into it that we want to get out. So if we want to be the kind of person that shows up and works hard, then we say, I'm the type of person that shows up and works hard. And you're going to lean into that and the why that you have with your husband. You guys are building something, you're excited about it, you're telling other people, you're embodying it, and now you've got the identity statement of I'm the type of person that does this, I see this through. And you repeat that cocktail over and over, over and over, and following it up with that score, and all of a sudden over time, and it will take time because it is a process, but over time you're going to stick to it because it means something to you and your husband. You've got the rule about showing up. You're rating yourself on how you did that day. You're feeling good on the days that you killed it. And you're reminding yourself to dig a little deeper on the days where you don't. And I promise, if you just work that process over and over and over, 2 weeks, a month into this, it's just going to be second nature. You're going to be showing up. You're going to be excited. You're going to see it through.
Rule number 8, lead by example.
One of the things I think people don't understand about being a CEO is that ultimately being a CEO, running a company is almost, it's 70% people. The strategy is definitely important, but man, momentum isn't about moving fast. Or I should say, it isn't just about moving fast. It's about getting a group of people pointed in the same direction and moving fast. And so understanding how to galvanize a team and get them pointed in the same direction is really, really critical. So in this specific time, number one is leading by example, always and forever. If you want to do anything when people are involved, whether it's kids, whether it's somebody you love that is, there's a piece of advice you desperately want them to take and they're not taking it, whether it's your company, the answer is always first and foremost, lead by example. That is critically important. So you want to be hopeful. You want to be optimistic. You want to show them through your behaviors and your actions time and time again with an inhuman level of consistency exactly how to face adversity. Now, you don't want to bullshit. You don't want to lie. So you want to make sure that you're doing the work to make sure that you're keeping yourself hopeful and optimistic. Now, how do we stay hopeful and optimistic? We have to have certain beliefs in place and we have to have certain rules in place. So first of all, as it comes to rules, I know that I always need to be moving forward. I can't ever be afraid to make a decision, that I would rather be running 1,000 miles an hour in the wrong direction than standing still. Okay, that rule has served me very well. Now, why is it better? Tom, you're running in the wrong direction. That's way worse than standing still. Not true. The reason that you never want to stand still is there's zero progress made when you stand still. When you move, you're at least learning, even if you're moving in the wrong direction. Failure is the most information-rich data stream you will ever encounter. Let me say that again. Failure, moving in the wrong direction, is the most information-rich data stream you will ever encounter, meaning you're going to learn a lot. So now when you turn around and you start moving in the right direction, you're making a huge amount of progress. So even though, yes, you have to backtrack, it's still far better than standing still and not learning those lessons. So that is huge. So you have that rule. Now, beliefs. You need to believe that if it doesn't violate the laws of physics, then you can solve the problem. What happens is most people stay in this frame of mind where all they can see are the problems. And right now, there is an avalanche of problems. It is so easy to get mired in the problems. But if you have a belief that as long as it doesn't violate the laws of physics, this is possible, that any obstacle can be overcome, that you just have to figure out what it is that's going to allow you to go over this obstacle, under this obstacle, through this obstacle, around this obstacle, whatever, but you know that giving up is not an option. Now it's like, cool, hey, even if I fail, even if I mess up, I'm going to learn. So there's some hope, there's some optimism, right? You can meet your team with a truism, something that you actually believe. You can use Jocko Willink's language, which he says anytime something goes wrong, his only response is good. The enemy is bearing down on us. Good. We don't have enough equipment. Good. And because he meets it with that, he stays in a solution-oriented mindset. Now, you always want to be in a solution-oriented mindset when all you're doing is focusing on the problems, and the most sinister thing about excuses is how valid they are. So I get it. You have every excuse in the book for things to fail, to not be optimistic, to not be hopeful. I get it. And it's all real. We are going through the most devastating time for a business ever. And how do I respond to that? Good. because I know in this there's going to be a solution, and I'm going to figure it out where a lot of people are going to break because they're not going to be able to get their head in the right place. So my team can see that I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic because I have that belief, because I have the rule to be moving forward, to figure this out, to not be afraid to fail. And they see me with that like almost naive optimism, always moving forward, but they also see me learning from my mistakes, reorienting and moving forward again. If you can do that, you're actually going to get results, and nothing is more hopeful than results.
Rule number 9, turn your wants into needs.
Turning a want into a crushing need is one of the most useful processes that you can master. And when you understand that we don't get what we want, but we get what we need, then you begin to understand, okay, this is something I want to learn how to line up. So I want to take this thing that I want and isn't a need, it really is just a want. And I want to figure out the process of how I increase its level of importance in my mind. So one of the most important things to understand about the human brain is that the brain, the conscious mind, will work backwards to justify what it's done. So the human brain is absolutely fascinating, and it has a mechanism. So I talk about this thing called the physics of being human. Like, what does the brain just do in and of itself? And one of the things that the brain does in and of itself, always and forever, is it will justify what happens. There's this amazing thing, a study that was done on people that have short-term memory loss so that they cannot form new memories. They have brain damage that makes it impossible for them to form new memories. So a doctor will go in, they will have a pin on their hand, they will shake hands with the person, it pokes them, person jerks their hand back. Now remember, they cannot form new memories. So that doctor jabs them and they're in pain, they pull their hand away. The doctor comes back 5 minutes later, the person does not remember meeting them at all, but they still won't shake their hand. Now when you ask them, oh, why won't you shake my hand? They will make shit up. And they'll be like, well, I've just always had this problem with shaking people's hands that are wearing white lab coats, which is total bullshit. 5 minutes ago, they were more than happy to shake that person's hand. So that is the conscious mind needing to make sense of what's going on in the subconscious mind, because the way that memories are stored are very different. So you have the implicit and the explicit memory. So you've got something that's happening consciously and subconsciously. So the short-term memory is not turned into long-term memory. And so they don't remember why they're doing this thing, but the part of the memory that's working based around the pain and knowing what causes pain stimulus realizes that this person generates pain, but the subconscious speaks in emotion. It doesn't speak in language. And so the rational, logical mind tries to then make sense of what is going on. So we're going to hijack that to work for us here in this example where we want to get hyped up about something, but we want it to be real. So we know that the mind is doing this. And yes, we're totally hacking the mind. Yes, we're playing a bit of a game with ourselves, but it ends up having this incredible impact. So what I do is I embody the passion that I want to feel. So like I'm doing now, you can imagine if you're sitting in a room with me, I would probably be speaking much more subdued. But because I understand that the passion that I'm feeling is infectious to other people, that if I can embody it, then I can get other people to feel it as well. Now, the crazy thing is it works in a loop. And I actually begin to feel that the response that I'm having is the right amplitude. So even if I'm merely consciously turning the dial of excitement up or whatever about the goal that we have, because I know that I want to spring out of bed in the morning, I'm going to dial that up and say, this thing that I'm working towards, it isn't a want. This is a need. I've got to have this. And this is why I have to have it. And I'm going to create some logic that really means something to me. And I'll give you an example. At Quest, to show up every day and to fight that hard, to learn manufacturing, to spend my time repairing equipment, it was crazy. And there were times it was so frustrating. And I knew for me to do something I didn't want to do, that I was going to have to leverage that notion. So I said going into it, how do I attach to building a nutrition company to something that I care intrinsically about, deeply about? And that thing became my mom and my sister. And so I said, okay, this is really powerful because I can show up every day and fight for my mom and my sister. So how do I associate my mom and my sister to a nutrition company? And the answer was very simple. My mom and my sister were morbidly obese, and I wanted to help make food that they could choose based on taste, and it happened to be good for them. And if I could do that, that they would be in my life longer. They would live longer, healthier lives. They would feel better. So when a piece of equipment broke down, or I was dealing with something incredibly frustrating, or I was working insane hours, it was just, hey, I'm doing this for my mom and my sister. And I would embody that, and I would tell people that, and I would feel it, and I would get amped up the way that I'm doing right now. I would literally say things like this, like a crazed man, and it began to infuse, so that over time, 6 months, 12 months, it was like I really felt like this was a crusade for my mom and my sister. And that is so powerful, the ability to take something that you care deeply about, marry it to a goal that you care about, so that you have this emotional resonance with that thing, is very, very powerful. So that's the brain hack that you're going to use to get yourself super excited.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is learn to take criticism.
Looking at and understanding who that person is, what your relationship is with them, how much they can take, what the nature of your relationship is with them in terms of feedback. So for instance, there's a person on our team, his name is Will Vu. Now, Will came to me one day and said, he'd been working with me for a couple years, and he said, Tom, I want to be honest with what my goal is here at Impact Theory. And I said, amazing, tell me all about it. And he said, I want to be co-CEO. And I said, all right, but if you're really gunning for that, like, we can play a game and all just sort of giggle and laugh and say, how cute that Will, at the time, he was probably 19 or 20 that he said that, how cute that Will is calling his shot like Babe Ruth and saying that he wants the top job. Or I can take that really seriously. And now we can talk about what would it really take to get to that point. And if you're giving me permission, which is something that I'll do a lot with people, is you tell me, how hard basically you want to be pushed, because I'm happy to, like, if you want to know what it takes to get to your goal, right? Everything is an echo of your goal. He gave me his goal. And I said, cool, if that's really how you want me to treat you, like I'm grooming you to be the co-CEO, it's going to be hard. And we just had a call like yesterday or the day before where, he brought something up. He said something that I would have let slide in virtually anybody else. And I stopped him in the middle of that. I told him why it didn't make sense. He pushed back. I started escalating. It got to the point where I was like, look, if you really want to be the CEO, you've got to think in a way that is always solution oriented. You cannot be pushing off something, making it somebody else's problem, or saying that that's too big and that you're not going to be able to overcome that. And so you just sort of move on without thinking about it. I'm like, you are literally poisoning the rest of this team, because subliminally you've told them that this can't be done. And so going through that, I would not have done that with other people. I wouldn't have gone that hard. I might have suggested, hey, there's a better way to frame this or whatever. But with Will, because he has specifically asked me to actually help him develop the skill set that he will need to be the CEO, that I treat him differently than I might treat somebody else. Now, everybody in the organization, we have a total transparency culture, but you have to earn your way into that. So one, you're only as good as what you write down. So we have published what our culture is. So we have a culture document. It tells you exactly what a principles culture is. It tells you what we mean by transparency. It tells you that we expect people to own it, meaning your opinion, speak up, or get out. And so we hold everybody to that standard. And so there is a lot of open discussion. Now, we can do that because everybody who's here knew that before they came on, and they've bought into that culture, and they see the benefits of that culture. And so by communicating what that is, laying the ground rules, having, rules of engagement, which I'm sure as a military person you're intimately familiar with, once you have those rules of engagement, then it's like, hey, this is how we agreed we were going to deal with each other. You agreed you wanted to be pushed this way. And that to me is very important. Now, one thing that I will throw in there is be careful who you hire. Some people just are not going to have the makeup for that. I won't even say it's good or bad. I'm just saying they approach the world in a very different way. They want their feedback in a very different way. They may not want to be pushed like you want to push them. And so you have to know going in whether somebody is going to be a cultural fit. I think it's as important to judge a cultural fit as it is to judge a skill set fit. So if you get all of those rules of engagement, a good cultural fit, you've written down the culture, you've discussed it, you have buy-in and permission from the person. Now you can be very open and back and forth. And then if you really want to bring it home, you're going to make sure that you're as receptive to that kind of feedback as you would expect them to be. So if you lead by example and you're showing people what it means to take criticism, to be pushed, to want to know where you're weak, and then to work to get better at that. When people see that, man, and then you come to them and say, hey, of course, in a compassionate way, but never sacrificing clarity for kindness, but you tell them, hey, here's, where I think you are lacking. Here's what I think that you should do to improve that. People know the sincerity of it because they've been on the other side and told you where they think you're weak and how they think you can improve. And if you took that on well and actually did something about it and actually got better, and that we're all reaping results because of that improvement, now people are really going to be open to it because you've set the tone. And that is certainly how I do it. Healthy relationships are a critical part of the human experience. If you truly want to live a joyful life, you need to make sure that you have close, loving relationships. If you don't currently have close, loving relationships, do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Immediately address that in your life. If you need to start somewhere and you have no idea where to start, man, go to a soup kitchen. Do whatever. But get out with other people, start connecting to people, do something, some kind of way, join a Facebook group, join a club, virtual or in person, whatever weird interests you have. I promise there are other people out there that have that same interest. This was, 10 years ago, maybe more, 15 years ago when I learned about furries, which I still am surprised is a thing, but it is a thing. And the fact that even pre-internet, there were entire groups of people that would meet up and this is their thing. I thought, okay, if there's people that are into that, no shade, man. If that's your thing, that's your thing. But if there is a convention's worth of people that are into that, then there is a group of people for every interest, no matter how niche. So find your people, connect. That is hugely important. And then don't look for other people to carry you, but having people in your life that support you, and this is the easiest way to explain this. From my wife, I say, I'm not looking for sympathy. Okay, I don't want you to feel bad for me. Empathy, that would be amazing. I want you to understand what I'm going through. Now, here's how it plays out. I said to her in the beginning, if ever I'm knocked to my knees, I don't want you to get on your knees with me, put an arm around me, cry with me, and tell me everything is going to be okay. It's not what I'm looking for. And even worse, I don't want you to do all that and then tell me, yeah, all of this sucks and it's in life, life's a sandwich and every day is another bite. People used to say that all the time when I was a kid. That was like the Tacoma motto. Drove me crazy. What I want, my beloved wife, when I'm knocked to my knees, which will happen, I want you to extend a hand. I want you to show that you understand what I'm going through, but I want you to pull me back up, help brush me off, and remind me of what I'm capable of so that I can soothe myself, refocus, remember that I'm the learner, and get me pointed back in the right direction. That to me is the difference between empathy and sympathy. Don't cry for me. Help me get back in the fight. So surround yourself with people that are like that. Don't look for them to carry you. Having people that remind you of what you're capable of, having people remind you of what you're capable of becoming, that's rad. That's dope shit. Surround me with people like that, and I'm about it. But I don't just want somebody to cry with me. It's not going to take me where I want to go. To make progress and to fail forward, to really figure out when you make this catastrophic error, you have to conceptualize it in the right way. So when you're trying something, recognize that as a hypothesis. So number one is to recognize, I have a goal. My goal is over there. I'm here. There's a gap between my goal and I. I need to know what that gap is. I need to understand it. I need to know what the impediment is. I need to recognize why. If I just keep doing the thing that I'm doing now, why am I not going to get where I'm going? Okay. So first you have to identify that. Now, once you identify that, then it becomes a question of what is your best guess, which is called a hypothesis. So you make that hypothesis, which again is just your best guess as to what you would need to do. It's very important. This isn't thinking. We're not going to live in the abstract. That when we finish this, it's going to tell us to do something. So what would I need to do in order to overcome the obstacle that stands between me and my goal? If your major goal is like way down the road, you're going to have to break it down into smaller goals. And so this goal with my next 15 minutes is how I tell people to think of it. When you understand your goal clearly enough and you understand the impediments clearly enough, you know exactly what you should be doing with the next 15 minutes. Okay? That's the level of clarity that you need. So, okay, cool. I've identified this, what the thing is that I believe I need to do. It's a guess. Don't wait for lightning to strike. Don't wait for anything to be self-evident. You have a best guess as to what you should do with the next 15 minutes. And then your 15 minutes stack up to your best guess, over a week or a month or a quarter, whatever, however big that project is. Then you're going to do that thing. So I have a hypothesis on what would be the most efficient way, most effective way for me to overcome this obstacle. And then I'm going to do that thing. And that thing is either going to work or it's not. And if it works, amazing. Did it work as well as it could have? If not, and I have to do this, it's something I have to do again, then refine and do it again. If it did, then what's my next obstacle? And I'm going to do that one. Now, eventually you're going to do something and it doesn't work. It either you stood still or you made so little progress as to be unworthy of celebration, or maybe you even move backwards. Maybe this is that moment where you totally embarrass yourself. Maybe this is something that happened out in public and now you look like a total ass. And in that moment, you need to go, okay, why did this not work? Okay, so this is where we analyze the data. Now, the key to analyzing the data is before you run this experiment, you need to say what success looks like. So, all right, if I think, here's my best guess as to what I need to do to overcome this problem. And here is what success will look like. So let me give you an example. We had a hypothesis. I still can't believe that this is true, but it is. We had a hypothesis here on our YouTube channel that if we put guests, if we took a photo of them or pulled a screenshot from the episode where they're doing something with their hands, that the click rate will go up and that the click rate will positively impact our monetized views. Okay, so that's our hypothesis. We test it. I still can't believe this is true, but it works. And it doesn't just work most of the time, it works almost all of the time. Now, nothing is, you never have one blanket statement where it truly works for everything, but I'm talking north of 95%. So, hey, we had this hypothesis, it worked, we did it. Now, the number of times where we had a hypothesis, hey, make the text white with a drop shadow. We tried it and that didn't work. And it's like, wow. I can't believe that didn't work. It looks so much better than black text, but it keeps losing over and over and over. So in that moment, it's like, okay, well, I really thought this was going to work, but it didn't work, and you try something else. Now, when it's something where there's emotion involved, that gets harder for people to get clear on what the data is. And that's why you have to have a very clear understanding of what success looks like. You're setting your expectations too high. You're triggering this sense of inadequacy in yourself. So I will tell you that kicking yourself in the ass is super powerful, but my rule is I never do anything that diminishes my sense of self. Why? Because it actually makes you less effective, and effectiveness at moving towards my goal is the barometer by which I judge whether something was a success or not. And if I have made a decision and it moves me away from my goals because it's making me feel badly about myself, because I've set a standard that's too high, I'm nitpicking myself to death, now I'm getting worse, that's moving me away from my goal. And so I'm not going to do that. I don't allow that in my life. I don't allow it in my life. I do not allow myself to do things that diminish my sense of self and move me backwards. So when I feel it happening, I'm like, hey, even if it's true, even if I am the biggest loser that ever walked this earth, reinforcing that in myself will make me capable of less. Therefore, I don't do it. I have a bright line in my life that says I only do and believe that which moves me towards my goals. So we're just going to recognize as we set these expectations that it doesn't make sense to do anything that diminishes ourselves. So we're not going to set expectations that are so high that we know that we are bound to fail, or to set high expectations. I love that. Reach for the farthest star in the world, but don't value yourself for whether or not you achieve it. Value yourself for the sincere pursuit, meaning you really showed up. You really tried to get to that far star. to achieve some insane goal. It was not rhetoric. You really showed up. You got in there. You bled for this thing. But the whole time, you're valuing yourself. You're cheering yourself on because you're really trying. You're the man in the arena, covered in blood, sweat, and dirt. You might be getting your ass handed to you, but you're trying. And if you're trying, then you should be rewarding yourself. And if you're rewarding yourself, then you should feel better about it, which makes you more likely to get back in the ring and fight. And if that is the thing that leads you towards your goals, which of course it is, then we know that we are going to do and believe in that thing. Because now we're in the arena, we're fighting. Our behaviors line up with our desire to achieve that goal. So don't worry about whether or not you actually ever get there. Because let me tell you, success cannot be guaranteed. Struggle can. You will struggle. I cannot guarantee that you will be successful. But the juice is never going to be the success. It's never going to be the accolades. Just as there is no feast so grand that you will never be hungry again, there is no accomplishment so profound that it won't be fleeting. No matter how big, no matter how much money you make, it will never be quote unquote enough because you're playing a game of neurochemistry. And your neurochemistry is designed to, no matter how big your meal was last time, to get you back out hunting again. It's just how it works. All desire is like that. It's cyclical. It'll feel awesome for a minute, for a day, for a week, maybe a month. But let me tell you, you're going to want to get back out there. You're going to want to hunt. You're going to want to accomplish again. So don't value yourself for that. This is how people end up making $1 billion only to feel as lost and empty as ever. You have a hole inside of you that can only be filled with progress, meaning, and purpose. It can't be filled with accomplishment. Irony of ironies. But that's the way an evolutionarily derived mind works. You have to be pushed to go on the journey over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Satiety, satisfaction, contentment are anathema to nature, to survival. So of course, you're never going to be able to sit in that. You're going to keep going again and again and again and again. So embrace that drive, accomplish huge things, if you can, but only value yourself for the sincere pursuit. The reality is that those who can delay eating the marshmallow the longest do the best, because you're right, delaying gratification is an absolute superpower. Now, one of the most extraordinary experiments was done at Stanford University. It's called the marshmallow experiment. There's a whole book written on this, utterly fascinating. They followed the participants in this study for like 25 years. Absolutely incredible. They bring these kids into a room. They give them a marshmallow. And they say, hey, you can eat the marshmallow now if you want. But if you wait until I come back, then I'll give you 2 marshmallows. So it's basically double your money. It's not going to be that long. Now, what the kid doesn't know is that the researcher isn't coming back. And they just want to see how long the kid is going to wait until they eat it. They do eventually come back, but they leave them really to struggle for quite some time. And what they found was the kids that could come up with games, whether singing to themselves, not looking at the marshmallow, whatever, the kids that were able to delay the gratification the longest ended up doing the best. They got the best grades, they got the highest paying jobs, they had the most successful relationships. Now, the reason that that works is in any one moment, if you're just operating around optimizing for momentary mind states, brain states, neurochemical states, then you're always going to be in short-term thinking. You're always going to get short-term results. If, however, you have this goal that excites you and is honorable, and you're able to push through all the boring stuff and all of that, then what you get is a set of skills that allow you to do things other people can't do. And as we established in the last question, if you can do things other people can't do, that is by its very nature success. And you will be rewarded in a way that other people will not be rewarded because they can't do the things you do. And as long as the things that you do are valued by society, then you are always going to do very well. But that ultimately is the key. You have to be able to delay gratification. Now, for me, understanding that that was the nature of things, that if I can delay my momentary wishes for something longer term, then I could get these very different results that separated me from other people. And because I'm excited about what I'm pursuing, I use that excitement as my trick to stay focused when things get boring. And I've said many times that boredom kills more entrepreneurs than failure. So everyone will tell you that fear of failure is what stops people, and that is a huge deal. But honestly, like, I think it's the fact that people don't want the outcome badly enough to fight through all the boring, painful stuff that you have to go through to get to the other side to ultimately be successful. So make sure that you are hyped up on your goal. If you're not, then you're not going to be willing to go through all the difficult things. Here is the reality. When it comes to figuring out where to start, the truthful answer is guess and get going. The reason people say just throw them into the deep end is because, let me tell you, you start trying things real fast when you're sinking to the bottom of the pool. Hey, does splashing my arms around like this work? Does kicking my legs like this work? Does grabbing at the person next to me and like trying to climb up them, does that work? That's you running a bunch of experiments, which you never would have done sitting on the bank thinking about it. You will not be able to think your way to success. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't think. It just means when you think and then go, either a lot of time has passed. So I would say if you've thought for more than 72 hours about it, thinking is no longer going to help you. That window though, very beneficial. Sleep on it a couple nights, really think through it, do some research. But now, post 72 hours, it's time to take action. Now that doesn't mean that we're not gonna think about it anymore. We're not gonna research. We are a whole lot. But that research magnifies when it's paired with action. So now, reading an article, listening to a podcast, is paired with flailing around like an idiot in the deep end, going, oh my God, now I see what they were trying to explain in that book, that article, that video, whatever. But you're never going to be able to make those connections if you're not actually in it. So you're not going to think your way to success. You are definitely going to get in there and do your way to success. That's the critical thing. There's no magical first step. You're so worried about the first step because you think that there's some like magical, auspicious first step that's like, and I see this now with NFT artists where it's like, oh man, but my Genesis piece means everything. And so they don't create anything because they are so worried about what their first piece is. That noise. Do something. Create. Get out there. Try. Longevity. Longevity. That's the game. And if you would allow me an aside, there was a class, I forget where, but this is so interesting, bear with me, where an art teacher said, you have two options before you. Your final grade can either be based on a single piece, and that's all you have to create this entire time, or I can grade you based on the pounds of art that you output, literally, the pounds, the weight, the number of items that you create. I think this was a sculpture class. So you've got people that are like, hey, amazing. I'll take all my time. I'll do one thing. It's going to be amazing. And she said, without question, like 95% of the time, the best grades went to the people that did art by the pound. Why? Because they tried and failed and tried and failed, and they weren't precious about it, and they just got in there and they got messy and they pushed their skills forward. They got those samples. They learned, they researched, they tried. They had a whole bunch of stuff that was garbage. But man, a few times in there, they really hit on something and they really learned and they really pushed themselves forward. Live life by the pound. Now let's talk about the more important part, which is earning credibility with yourself. This was one of the big breakthroughs in my life, was realizing that if I said I was going to do something and I wanted to give up on it, I would think about, well, if I position it this way, if I move this way, if I kind of hide this from that person and sweep this under the rug over here, then I can still manage other people's beliefs about who I am. And as long as other people think that I'm cool, I'm good, I'm talented, I'm smart, whatever, then I'm good. And what I realized is, A, that only works 50% of the time. So 50% of the moves that you make to try to manage your persona, 50% of the time it works. The other 50% of the time, though, people see through it, and then you begin to earn the reputation of being a bullshit artist. So what I realized was, okay, not only does it not work as well externally as I think, but it doesn't matter what the outside world thinks if I don't think positively of myself. So that became my obsession, is understanding credibility is most important when you're talking about self-credibility. And how we earn credibility with ourselves is by saying, I'm going to do this thing, and then doing it. And then you just keep inching that out farther and farther and farther until you get to the point where you show up for yourself in the most extreme and difficult of circumstances. So I'll tell you guys a story. At my old house, I used to have this painting of the Michael Jordan flu game hanging above my fireplace. And that was so inspiring to me. And I always said, I put that up there to remind myself of what I'm capable of and how I would react if I were put in a championship game situation. And then lo and behold, flash forward probably a year later, and I actually get the flu and I have a double episode the next day. And I remember I had a fever. I was rocked. I could barely stand up. It was really miserable. And I had to do all the prep the day before for the episodes. And I was like, I actually don't know if I'm going to be able to make it through this. Like, that's how sick I was. It's one of the sickest I've ever been.
In fact, right now, we're all going to make a promise to ourselves. You can do it silently. We don't have to have everybody shouting it out. But you're going to make a promise to yourself right now, because if you follow through with what we're about to say, everything will be different. If you fail to do this, you'll come back a year from now and you're going to write the same shit on the wall. I promise, because this is the part that you have to break out of. Make yourself a promise right now that you will disengage your sense of self, your sense of self-worth from achievement. And you're going to marry that to pursuit. Once you are wholly focused on sincere pursuit, everything changes. When you're focused on outcome, when you're saying to yourself, I want to get rich, I want to win the Academy Award, those are my dreams. It's an end state, right? It doesn't work. Like, here's one of those things. Things become trite because they're so true. So please, for the love of God, don't make people repeat the most obvious shit ever, like money can't buy happiness. Okay? Money can't buy happiness. It can buy a lot of cool shit. It bought me a really nice house. In fact, baby, show the photo. Yeah. We actually own part of that jet company. I'm not joking. How crazy is that? We know the CEO. There was one time where I was trying to get on the flight and they were giving me shit. I can't remember why. And I called the CEO up and I was like, yo, you need to talk to your gate agent. Like, that's money. It's bananas. Money is better than you think. It is more powerful than you think, but it is not at all what you've been told. Money solves money problems, and that's awesome. And there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with money. There's no joke. So we run Impact Theory out of our house. Our house is like 10,000 square feet, swimming pool, balconies, all that crazy shit. One of our rooms is actually called, when we bought the house, they called it this. It's called the Great Room. And that thing is big. I'm not joking. We once played Nerf with Nerf guns. We did like a whole hide and seek, capture the flag thing in the house. It was crazy. So money does really extraordinary things. People will chase money forever because money actually has utility. So I am not the guy that's saying, oh, money doesn't matter, or money's not a thing, or money's not worth the pursuit. What I am saying, though, money really can't buy happiness. The very thing that you're pursuing in your life is very simple. It is fulfillment. That's it. Now, I sum up fulfillment very simply. How do you feel about yourself when you're by yourself? Do you feel good? Do you feel like you're making the most of your life? Are you tapping into what the Greeks call techne? Are you working your ass off? And that's a key component. Is it hard? Are you working your ass off? Sad but true. Are you working your ass off for a set of skills? This is the angry face. This is about tapping into rage. We talked about that, Elizabeth. Not at rage yet. We'll get there. But there we go. So you really have to work hard for a set of skills that matter to you. Now, the skills have to matter. That's a key part of the equation. Once the skills matter to you and they allow you to serve not only yourself but other people, and then you actually go and serve those people, it becomes this really potent cocktail of neurochemistry. But I want to make sure that everybody understands the game that you're playing is a game of neurochemistry, right? In the last year, at least 2 billionaires committed suicide. So I mean, that's heartbreaking when anybody commits suicide. But when billionaires start committing suicide, like if the answer is not just self-evident beyond all imagining that money is not going to solve the problems that exist between your ears, like there's nothing more anyone can tell you. A fool never learns. A smart man learns from his mistakes. A wise man learns from the mistakes of others. On this one, I'm begging you, be wise. I'm not telling you not to chase money. I'm just saying it's not going to feed you emotionally the way you think it is. So you've got to completely divorce yourself from this notion of outcome and become completely obsessed with the idea of sincere pursuit. Now, why sincere pursuit? The reason to tie your sense of self, your self-esteem, your pride, your ego, your identity, all of that, the reason to tie that to sincere pursuit is it's the only part you can control. I cannot promise you that you'll ever be successful. You cannot promise you that you will be successful. But you can promise and know, if you actually did it, to show up every day and really pursue it. You control your mindset. You control how you feel about yourself. Nobody can actually get you to feel some kind of way about yourself. You allow that shit in, right? That's like the cheesiest self-help shit you're ever going to hear. But it got cheesy because it's so true, so people repeated it a lot. And if you lose sight of that, if you lose sight of what you allow yourself to think is going to control you at a neurochemical level, and at the neurochemical level, that's going to influence then again how you feel and how you think. And then you get into this death spiral where you're thinking negative shit, you believe in the negative shit, which makes you feel badly about yourself. And then you get stuck in that and you can't get out. And you see a lot of that on the hopes and fears. People afraid they're never going to be able to break free. People in this room that took the time to write it down that they were never going to get out of that negative loop. And that negative loop is really real, but here's the thing. The negative loop is based in biology. And once you begin to understand what the biology is exactly, then you can begin to take control of your life. And step one in the biological train is to break the tie that you have between outcome and worth. Once you begin to break that down, then you can step to naked and raw and say, all right, this is just practice. And once you're in that mode of practicing, you're in skill acquisition mode. And the name of the game is skill acquisition. Like it really is sort of that dull and boring. It's just about getting so good at something that you can't be denied. And that's one of those things, like I'm going to say that phrase so much that I worry that's going to become trite. But that is one of the most awe-inspiring notions on the planet. The thought that you could become so good at something that you leave people in awe. And when you can leave people in awe, you can do just about anything you want with your life.
What steps can I take to bring my focus to the one thing I'm working on while blocking out all else? All right. So the real key is you've got to learn to compartmentalize. So what I do to begin my compartmentalization is I create a list of all the important things that I should be working on. I put that list in order. This is very important. Getting good at prioritizing is an art form. It is critically important that you get good at that art form. And as you begin to break things down and put them in order, now you can tell yourself, hey, this is what I should be working on right now. So rather than trying to digest all the different things that have to be done, it's I'm focused on this one thing right now. And my only job right now is to focus on that thing. And so by not letting your mind wander, and this meditation is very good at bringing your focus back to the breath, which teaches you to bring your focus back to whatever. So I've got a lot of things, many things competing for my attention, but I know what my important things are. I'm working on the number one thing right now, let's say. And so, this is my entire world. And if I find myself wandering, I bring myself back. Now, part of the reason that I can invest so heavily in that is because I have the belief that that's the most effective way to work. So, since behaviors follow beliefs, you want to make sure that you put that belief in place, which is true, by the way, that you can do everything that you want to do, just not all of it at once. So everything has to be done sequentially. You can't do everything at the same time. And this is why you have to prioritize things out. So if we know that multitasking is actually a myth and that you can put people in brain scanners, and what you're seeing, people who seem like they can multitask, what they're doing is called rapid switching. So they don't have what I have, which is high switching costs. When I get in a flow, man, I can go and go and go. But if I try to bounce back and forth between things, then I pay this high price and inefficiency between the switching costs of moving from switching from that task to this task. So I focus, I stay on one thing, I have them in order, I know what I'm working on, I remind myself that I only have one job in that moment, that is to work on that thing. I know that that's the most efficient way to work, and I know that I'm good at prioritizing things, so it becomes very easy, boom, boom, boom. And then you just hold yourself accountable to actually doing that. Practice makes perfect. You might have a difficult time in the beginning. Start meditating if you need to train yourself to come back to the breath over and over and over, and then you can just apply that to whatever you're working on. Come back to the project. Discipline. Now, we're not doing discipline because our parents tell us to. We're doing discipline as a test to see if it works to get us towards our goal. Now, if you have historically struggled with putting discipline in place in your life, right now you're going to say, but Tom, I can't stick to discipline. So why would this work this time? That's when we realize one fundamental truth. This is a desire problem, masquerading as a discipline problem. Once you want your goal, the way that a drowning man wants his next breath, you will find discipline very easy to stick to. And so learning to build your desire for the goal that you have set for yourself, that becomes the incredibly important part. And the way to dial that desire up is to do a loop. And it goes like this. You're going to tell yourself that you're very excited about this goal. You're going to tell other people that you're very excited about this goal. And then you're going to embody the feeling, the amplitude that you want to feel when you think about that goal. Now, there's a mechanism in the human mind where it will justify the way that you act, no matter what. I won't waste time explaining some of the studies, but they are utterly fascinating about how even people with damaged areas of the brain will end up making up random ass stories because the brain abhors a lack of reason. So the brain will always and forever make up some story about why you're doing what you're doing. And so if you're responding hugely to something, oh my God, I'm so excited about doing this thing. Like I'm really amped up about it. And you're saying that to yourself and you're saying it to other people and you're saying it just like that. Then the brain goes, there must really be something here. We've got this elevated level of emotion. Amazing. Let's leverage that. And the brain doesn't say, let's leverage that. But the brain will say, okay, we've got this elevated level. You're going to leverage the fact that the brain says that to repeat it, to reinforce. And over time, you actually just will feel that heightened level of emotion. It's the way the brain works. What you repeat, you become. Neurons that fire together, wire together, things that you do frequently, including embodying that amplitude of emotion, right? Lisa Feldman Barrett's book, How Emotions Are Made, talks about how it starts with the body and then the brain applies meaning to it. So if you're getting amped up, you're excited, the body is saying to the brain, yo, like we're amped, we're excited, we're doing these things. And the brain goes, oh, amazing. It must be because this really matters. And once you get the brain saying, hey, we're this excited because it matters, you're firing those neurons together, the excitement around this thing. So the excitement and the pursuit of that thing begin to mesh. And now we just over time have an actual desire to pull this off. Once we have the actual desire to pull this off, then all of a sudden putting that discipline in place becomes very easy. And that's the name of the game. You want to make it such that you want it badly enough that the discipline becomes easy to stick to because it's going to move you towards that thing that you really want. But you've got to learn to want that thing. Now, I'll give my typical disclaimer. This trick works incredibly well. Now, it only works on things you actually have a legitimate interest in. You couldn't get yourself excited about something that you truly just find stupid, but something where you actually do get a natural response. You actually are naturally into that thing. All we're doing is dialing it up, right? So if it's already a dial tone, there's nothing you can do to change the amplitude. But if the amplitude is already there and you get this reaction, we can really exaggerate that reaction and build that desire to get where we're going. Now, since that is the case, you need to be very careful what you apply this to, because you can end up really wanting some stupid shit. I know from experience. I dialed the dial on my desire for money. I cranked that shit to a 20 and then spent 8.5 years pursuing money only to come out completely miserable. So don't waste your time dialing that up on something that isn't exciting and honorable. Meaning, again, honorable, it elevates you and other people, not just you. All right. Be careful what you decide to want, but know that it's very powerful. I will tell you that my to-do list is always in order of importance. And I think that there is an optimal order to do things in. So important things, 100% using the lead domino strategy. So what's the biggest bang for my buck? What could I spend the next 15 minutes on that would have the biggest impact in leading me towards my goals? Okay, that's how I always think about my official to-do list. Now, when I think about a morning routine and what order I'm going to do things in, then it has to do with what's going on in my life at that point, what's the most important thing to me in that moment, and then ordering things accordingly. So there have been times in my life where the first thing I do is meditate. There have been times in my life where the first thing I do is go to the gym. And so those are really the big two things that I oscillate between, but there are also times where I will immediately go to work. So any one of those three things may be the first thing that I'm doing in my morning routine, depending on what's going on in my life. So how do I decide between those? So when I'm really focused on getting my physique in order, I'm focused on the gym as being the thing that I want to make sure that no matter what else happens during the day, I get that done, then I do that first. And that really is what slot number one is for in any morning routine, is what is the most important thing that you know, no matter what else falls by the wayside during this day, if it gets crazy, things will crop up, that I know that I'm going to get that thing. And so right now I'm going to the gym first. There was a long stretch of time there where I wasn't as focused on the gym. And so it was like, well, I'll work out later. Let me do a little bit of work first and then I'll go to the gym. And I found what was happening was instead of working out 5 days a week or 6 days a week, I was working 3 days a week or sometimes 2 days a week because so much would pop up during the day that I wasn't getting to it. Now, that made sense and I didn't change for a long time because there was so many key initiatives at Impact Theory that I was trying to get to that was truly more important to me. But then I hit a threshold event where I was like, nah, now I really want to get back in and really, really focus on the gym. And ironically, it was because my lower back started to hurt from underutilization. Just a quick shout out to anybody suffering from lower back pain. I can basically tell you what it is. Poor diet, high inflammation, and not deadlifting enough. Now, that doesn't mean high weight deadlifts. In fact, I used to do that. Now I just do low weight, high rep, but I find that my back hurts when I don't work it out. So again, everything's individual. Try it out for yourself, but that's important. So that's how I judge what to do first. My typical modus operandi would be that lifting is the first thing I do. Then I would meditate, and the meditation I use what I call thinkitation to get into then the work. So working out, meditating, work is typically my path. Again, mileage may vary, try your own. But if you're not sure what to do, you can try that one. It's pretty damn effective for waking up the brain, then practicing lowering your heart rate, your breathing rate by going straight into the meditation. And then when your brain has all that clarity that comes from working out, then you can leverage that as you meditate to get the ideas you're going to need to actually be effective at work. And that's why I do it.
You're never going to get rid of the fear of following your passion. Let's start with that. As you said, there is no such thing as arriving in life. And this is one of the main ideas that I want people to really grapple with as you think about how to live your life well, is that there is no success big enough that you can stand in that success and that it will last forever. Really, this is a game of neurochemistry. This is how you feel. This is what stresses you out. This is what do you love. This is an ever-changing roller coaster of emotions. And so understanding that you could fail at a job that you hate, I think this was Jim Carrey's advice to his father, that you could fail at a job that you hate, so you might as well at least try the one that you're going to love. Now, that doesn't mean that we just throw caution to the wind, and we're going to get more into that with some of the subsequent questions, but recognizing that you will never reach a destination. The only destination in life is death, and that is not a worthy aim. You shouldn't be thinking about that or focusing on that or thinking in terms of, I just need to get to 95 or 150 or whatever age you're aiming at. This really is a question about how you want to feel every day. And once you understand that there are things that make you feel alive, those things you're passionate about, those things that give you more energy than they take, and then there are things that take more energy than they give. And so you want to be very careful to structure your life in a way that you're doing something that gives you more energy than it takes. Okay, so we know that we're never going to arrive. Because we know that we're never going to arrive, we understand that this is really just a game of emotional management. Because we know that this is a game of emotional management, then what we're asking is, what is this thing that gives us passion? Is it giving us the neurochemistry that we want? Or is the thing that we're passionate about so high risk that even though it would be fun in the abstract, once I really commit to that and make it my job, it stops having that same sense of giving me energy. And that's the tension. This is where people end up not being able to make a decision because they have not yet figured out how to optimize their life in such a way that they can pursue that thing that they're passionate about without that sense of joy and excitement and that incredible thrill of getting better at something that you love doing. And that even when it's hard, it's giving you that energy. Because people can get lost in that, they get in there, they think this is going to be amazing, that passion turns into a job, and then they lose the enthusiasm, or there's so much stress and pressure around having to be successful at that passion because you no longer have the safety net of a job or whatever the case may be. They don't recognize that just pursuing something that's your passion on paper isn't necessarily going to solve that problem. That the problem fundamentally is that life is an ever-changing roller coaster of emotion, and the name of the game is to manage those emotions well. Okay, so how do we set it up? If we have a passion and we want to follow that, how do we do it well? So we know that we're never going to get rid of the fear until we have predictability and stability in terms of the financial things that we need. And I would say we want to take care of that. We want to make sure that we have as much safety and security on the financial side as we can to give us the room to pursue the things that we're passionate about. Now, the fastest way to do that is to cut your expenses to the quick. If you don't have an expensive lifestyle, this becomes a whole lot easier. And one of the mistakes that people make is they're living a lifestyle that's beyond their means, and so they have to keep making this massive monthly nut, and so it becomes very stressful to pursue that thing that they love. Okay, so we're either going to recognize that we have to reduce our expenses so that we don't have to worry so much about money, or if we already have a job that pays well, we have to pursue our passion in nights and weekends fashion such that we can build that financial stability so that we can then progress. Okay, so getting that stability there I think is really important. The people that have the strongest home life take the biggest risks. And oftentimes pursuing that passion is going to be a risk. So instead of trying to eliminate the fear, we're going to structure our life in such a way that the things that trigger the fear aren't as high risk. Okay, that's a big part of this. Then we want to make sure that we're structuring our passion in such a way that it doesn't end up robbing us of the joy. So we want to experiment with what our passion looks like as a financial endeavor. And I think that's a very important experiment to run. Again, nights and weekends without making any major life choices is going to be very important. Now, if we're in a situation where the odds are stacked against you, this is where the first two things that we just walked through become incredibly important. You want to make sure that you've got your finances taken care of so that if this fails, that it doesn't drag you down. That will make it not fun. And again, there's no accomplishment so great that you can stand in that forever. So even if you were to be successful, you still have to deal with the emotional management. So do not put yourself in this hyper-stressful situation where you're always living for the future, because the success is not guaranteed, but the struggle is. So the key is to struggle well. That's the answer. Get after it. Here is how to conceptualize failure and the disappointment that goes along with it. Once you understand that what the human animal is designed to do is learn, then you have to ask yourself if what has made the human animal the most apex of apex predators the world has ever seen, the most capable of completely changing its environment, what is it that allows them to learn fast? And the answer is failure. Now, the reason that failure is truly useful, and I'm not just saying that to make you or myself feel better. In fact, I wish that it wasn't the way to learn the fastest. But the reality is, the reason that it works so well is that when you fail, you trigger areas of the brain that are focused on memory and focus. So you've got the memory side, so you're going to remember this. You've got the pain. This does not feel good. I do not want to go through this again. So you've got that, which heightens your emotions, which makes you more likely to remember this thing moving forward. And then it also narrows your attention. So you're really looking at, why did this go wrong? And when you have this sense of, I never want to repeat this, and you're looking very closely at, why did this go wrong? Now, all of a sudden, failures, because of what it does to your brain, and quite frankly, because you're in the mix, you're trying things, and we learn better from doing than from reading about it or hearing about it. So failures suddenly become the most information-rich data stream on planet Earth, heightens your likelihood of remembering, and it focuses you in on exactly what's the problem. So now, even though failing sucks, part of what makes it valuable is that it sucks. In fact, it may suck in order to make it valuable. Let that sink in. That nature went, when this happens, in order for this to be useful for this animal, for this evolutionary creature, I need to make sure that it becomes advantageous, so that as they make mistakes, assuming that they don't get eaten by a lion, I want to make sure that they don't put themselves in that position again. And so we have to learn from some method. And the method that gets us moving, taking action, trying things, feeling the pain, focusing, that's going to be the thing that we're going to get the most takeaways from. So now, as you reframe what failure is not proof that you're a loser. Failure is the process by which you become better. Okay? Failure is not the process that reveals that you're a loser. Failure is the process by which you become better. That is the name of failure. So now, when you fail, why would you beat yourself up over it? It's the nature of progress itself. There is no way to get better without failing. It's the fastest way. It is the most effective way. It is necessary. You have to do it. And by the way, for you to have failed at something, you showed the courage to try it. So instead of wasting time beating yourself up over the fact that something went wrong, we're going to say, that's the nature of progress. We have to try something. It's not going to work as well as we want it to, or I may fall flat on my face. I may outright embarrass myself. And if I let that break me, I will fail to learn the lesson. But if I do what nature is compelling me to do, and I focus on what went wrong, why did this happen? Because I never want to go through this again. You stack enough of those, what went wrong? I never want to go through this again. Enough of those together, and you actually get good. And translating potential into skill set is the name of the game. And you will never do that more efficiently than you will through failure and mistakes. So allowing yourself to wallow in disappointment doesn't make any sense. It's the learning process. This is what you have to do in order to get good. So there's no reason to spend a lot of time being disappointed. You brush yourself off, you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you get going. That's it. That is the physics of progress.
If grit is as important as we say it is, sustained interest over time, that's really what grit is. And a lot of people talk about, in fact, the title of my speech is supposed to be about how you develop a passion, which we will talk about in a little bit, but this is going to be one of those things. When you have passion, one of the things that comes out of that is you've got the ability to sustain your interest over time. Do the hard things. Do the hard things. I can't emphasize that one enough. Put yourself in uncomfortable situations just to find the mental tactics that you're going to need to deal with the hard things. It's getting those tactics. Who knows the Stanford marshmallow test? All right. For those of you that don't, this is one of the most breathtaking examples of the human condition.
In the Stanford marshmallow test, they bring in, I don't know, they're 5 or 6 years old. They bring them in, and the person in the white lab coat says, here's a marshmallow. I'm going to go out of the room for a minute. I'll be back in just a few minutes. If you wait till I come back, I'll give you a second marshmallow. So essentially double your money. Not bad. Now, what the kid doesn't know is the researcher's never coming back. And all they want to know is how long will you wait before you eat the marshmallow? Some kids have literally gobbled it up before they even get to the door. Other kids are like singing to themselves, putting their head down, getting up, dancing around the room. Some of them bite like the underside and try to put it back so you can't see. And here's what's scary. They followed those kids for 25 years. And based solely on the length of time they were able to wait before they ate the marshmallow, predicted their level of success in school, predicted their level of success in the job market. The people who waited the longest got into the best schools, got the best grades, went on to have the highest paying jobs. Just your ability to delay gratification, your ability to find tactics that work to get your mind off something. There's no greater control than control over oneself. Anybody here ever done a 3-day water-only fast? Not intermittent fasting. 3 days. Do it. You will learn something about yourself, and it will be profound. And what you're going to learn is that your body is manipulative. And I did a 3-day fast just a couple weeks ago. And I had the flu right before, so there were cough drops laying around. And every time I walked by those cough drops, my brain was like, eat one. And I was like, you know I'm fasting. And I literally couldn't believe how consistently, every time I walked by those damn cough drops, that my body gave me this really intense impulse. And that's when I realized, the notion that there are multiple voices in your head, by the way, is very, very real. And I will give you one quick example. Who knows what the corpus callosum is? All right, the corpus callosum is the thick bit of tissue that connects the left and right hemisphere of your brain. If you sever that, you will get people that have literal multiple personalities, one in the right, one in the left. Some of the most intriguing stuff is, one of them will be devoutly religious and the other will be devoutly atheist in the same brain. And you can talk to them differently. It's absolutely crazy. But the multiple voices notion is real. There are multiple factions, if you will, pieces that your brain is broken up into. And by the way, you have the equivalent of a cat's brain in neurons just in your digestive tract. So the whole notion of gut instinct, think of all the cool shit cats can do. And you've got that in your digestive tract, neurons. It's literally the same material that your brain is made out of is in your digestive tract. It's utterly fascinating. So we have all these competing things that we want, but inside, if you think of that overwatch, that one person, that's you, that's meant to say, I have goals, and I'm going to act in accordance with my goals. I'm never going to sell out what I want most for what I want right now. I wanted a cough drop right now, but I wanted to get on the other side of a 3-day fast and say I did it, and I wanted that more. And in learning what your tools and tactics are, so for me, I welcome hunger like an old friend. And I literally, people must think I'm schizophrenic, because you'll walk into the room and I'll literally be pinching and poking at my fat, going, hunger, thank you. I'm so glad you made it back. It is so good to see you. I'm glad you're here. I know that you're oxidizing my fat, and I'm very grateful for that. So thank you. And in doing that, I reframe it not as something that is unwanted or painful, but as something that is doing exactly what I want it to do. And learning those mental tactics, that's the game. Learning those mental tactics, that's the game. That's how you're going to get good at whatever it is that you want to do. If you want to start a business, learning how to deal with your employees is absolutely critical. But let me tell you right now, if you lash out emotionally, your employees will lose respect for you. But it's just like the cough drop moment. Now, if somebody had seen me walk by the cough drop, they wouldn't know that I had literally had to stop myself from lunging at a cough drop. They didn't know that because I have control of myself. I've practiced things like that. I do 3-day fast. I do what I call bright lines. So I have a bright line. During the week, I don't eat my second meal before 11:30, under any circumstance. My wife one time brought my food 30 minutes early. I was preparing for an episode, it was so sweet of her, but I don't eat before 11:30 under any circumstance. So the food literally sat on my lap, smelling so good, and I was so hungry, and I said, "Hunger, thank you so much for showing up, because you're giving me the opportunity to prove to myself what a badass I am. Because I'm gonna smell how delicious you are, knowing my stomach is grumbling and tying itself in knots because I want to eat so badly, and I'm not going to." And in those moments, you earn credibility with yourself. I hate working out. Absolutely despise it. It's why I do it first thing in the morning. And the reason I hate it, the weights are heavy, and your muscles start burning when you get into the supposed good reps. So that just seems backwards. So it is not in any way, shape, or form fun for me. But I earn credibility with myself because it is something that I don't like. I earn credibility with myself showing up every day, and it also reminds me how much I can transform my body. It's very easy for me to show you my before and after picture. I used to be 60 pounds heavier. It's very easy for me to show you when I was heavy and then show you six-pack abs. You get it. But what you don't see is the body's just a reflection of the mind. What really happened was I changed my mind, and I had garnered skills, I had garnered tactics. The things that allowed me to not eat the coffee drop were the things that allowed me to not eat the things that I wanted, to not have a bowl of ice cream, to not indulge in things that are wonderfully delicious, but instead ask myself, what are my goals, and then back in with my behaviors.
How do you know when it's time to refuel and choose self-care instead of continuing to grind? Physiological self-awareness is critical. I hear a lot of talk about people developing psychological self-awareness, so understanding what you're good at, what you want to do, all of those things, incredibly useful. But understanding how to read your body may be even more important than that. So Lisa Feldman Barrett's book, How Emotions Are Made, detail the way that emotions are far more of a bottom-up phenomenon, meaning they come from your body. It isn't you thinking about something and then creating the emotion down. That does happen. And of course, you can spiral yourself out of control simply by thinking. But usually what begins this thinking process is a sense of unease, right? Anxiety is a bodily feeling, oftentimes disconnected from what you're thinking. So figuring out, ooh, why do I have this sense? Being able to process it consciously, we can pull it up into our conscious mind and think through it with words and logic. But oftentimes it's starting with that like, oh man, I don't feel good about this and I don't know why. So this is the fascinating thing about drugs, is drugs can either eliminate or change the bodily sensation, which then changes the story that you're telling yourself about the sensation. Now, this isn't an advertisement for drugs. It's to get you to understand that it can be risky to sever the sense of body from what you're telling yourself about it. So you want your body to give you this description of what is going on, but then as you take conscious control of that to develop that self-awareness around physiologically what's happening, you need to understand why you're feeling the way that you feel. And so developing that to get a sense of whether this is a time to keep pushing through, or whether this is like one of those moments where you actually really do need to step back. It's the difference between sore muscles from, a nice hard workout and a torn muscle or damaged joint from an injury. And the same thing is true when you're thinking about how hard to work, how hard to push yourself. You need to figure out this fatigue that I'm feeling, this unease, this anxiety, this stress. Is this a natural part of pushing through the difficulties of this project, or is something else going on? This is now really starting to cave in on me, and what I need to do now is take a step back, meditate, journal, hug my significant other, pet my dog, cuddle my kids, whatever the case may be, go for a run, but doing something that slows you down, lets you take a deep breath. And the only way to figure that out is to be able to interpret the feelings that your body's giving you into conscious thought. Okay? And getting good at that loop is very, very important. And it takes practice. It takes understanding what the body is communicating, why it's communicating it, what impacts it, like what you eat and drink has a huge impact on what your gut is telling you. And then your brain tries to make sense of it. And it doesn't always go, oh, I'm feeling anxious because, in my case, I was drinking a 0-calorie Monster, which, much to my dismay, because I absolutely love them, make me feel anxious. And so getting an understanding of that, seeing that pattern was actually quite transformational because I stopped drinking them and my anxiety levels plummeted by like 70%. It's pretty crazy. Didn't take me to zero, but it made it a phenomenon that was easily manageable through meditation. So this is where you have to develop that awareness, that pattern recognition, and be able to say, oh, I feel this way because of XYZ thing happening at work or with my spouse or with food that I'm consuming. So be very thoughtful about that. And that will then help you determine whether it's we need self-care or we just need to push through.
This is one of the most common reframes ever. Worth, being good enough, being right, being smart. Guys, these are very fragile ways to think of yourself. And I understand the temptation because it feels really good when you do feel worthy. It feels really good when you are right. It feels really good to actually be the best at something. But the truth of the world, just the truth of the world, it is this way. You're always going to encounter somebody better, stronger, faster, more pious, more worthy, more whatever. So if you live in a world of comparison, it will rob you of your joy. Even people who, like Michael Jordan, if you put him right now up against most rookies, the rookie's gonna win. Rookie's younger, faster, hungrier. Michael's just lost a step, he's gotten old. So if he were trying to make his life about his glory in that period, let's say he lives 80 years. If he's living for the glory of 20 years, that's the most heartbreaking life I can imagine. So you're going to move in and out of these moments where you are a badass to where you're not a badass. Don't value yourself for that. Value yourself for something that is anti-fragile. Being smart, being right, being good, being worthy, they are very fragile things because sometimes you won't be. It simply is this way. Valuing yourself for being a learner, on the other hand, for trying, that's anti-fragile. Because the more somebody attacks you for being dumb, but you build your self-esteem around learning, the first thing I think when someone says I'm dumb is awesome. In what way? Because I view myself in these 10-year windows. And I know the same people that were laughing at me when I became an entrepreneur, knew nothing about it, and I was who's the kid in the server room, and I was the only one with an office that had no windows, and there were like 9 other computers in my room, and nobody knew who I was, and the only contribution I made to phone calls was to say goodbye at the end of a conference call. I'm not kidding. 10 years later, I own a $1 billion business. Woo! Who the f*** is laughing now? But it only worked because I didn't mind looking stupid. It only worked because I wasn't asking myself whether I was worthy or whether I deserved it. I just asked myself, am I leaving it all out on the field? Yes or no? Am I learning? Yes or no? And if I'm not, I didn't go, oh, that makes me a bad person. I went, I need to change my actions to get a different result. And once you start thinking like that, and you literally value yourself for how hard you're trying, how much you're learning, how willing you are to accept when you fall on your face, so you don't try to get out from under it or campaign to convince people that you're better than you really are. Own where you're at. Because once you're real about it, then you can make progress. But if your energy cycles go to bullshitting yourself, you'll never get out of it.
Have very clear goals. It always freaks me out. Most people stop at the first sort of vague notion of what they want to do. I'm going to punch myself in the mouth if somebody comes up to me again and says, I want to help people. That's rad. That comes from a beautiful place. Like, I totally get it. But that's like coming to me and saying, I want to win an Olympic gold medal. Awesome. Winter or summer? Summer. Fantastic. Swimming or tennis? Swimming. Excellent. backstroke, freestyle. Like at some point, it's got to get so specific because you have to know what skills you need to acquire. You have to work backwards from the goal, and the goal has to be hyper specific. So if boredom is the #1 killer of entrepreneurs that they're not able to make it through, the next one is they don't have clear goals. And the worst part is they think they do. That's the part that terrifies me. The worst part is they think they do. Until you know exactly what your mission is and exactly what your business model is and what problem you solve, what very concrete problem that people are freaking out to have solved, until you do that, you don't have the necessary ingredients to build your business. All right, don't be romantic, be pragmatic. Look at the data. The data will tell you what to kill. The data will tell you what's working and what's not. This was the single best piece of advice that was ever given to me, and I ignored it for 3 years. I'm so embarrassed by that I always make sure any talk I give, people hear this. Know more about your product, service, industry, whatever, than anyone else. Than anyone else. If you guys have ever seen my interview show, the reason that it's doing as well as it's doing is I know more about the guest. One guest actually said this. I know more about the guest than their mother. I just put in more work than their mother. That's the truth. I go out and I research and I read everything and I watch every video that I can. And so I know so much about that person. I know I'm going to give a different interview than anyone has ever given before because nobody's done that level of research. Not only does it blow the guest away and totally endear them to me, but it gets us to the point where we can give an interview that has unique value. So know more about what you're doing than anyone else in the world and grind, baby, grind. For 2 years, that's what I look like every day. Hairnet, lab coat, gloves. Put in the work. Put in the work. And this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where you're really going to separate the people that are wantrepreneurs from the people that are real entrepreneurs. You've got to want to grind. You've got to learn to love that. You've got to learn to love to put in the work, to be proud of yourself that you showed up and put in the work, to be proud of yourself that you taught yourself how to suffer, to be proud of yourself that you're developing a mindset where you believe I can do anything I set my mind to. And by the way, once you believe that you can do anything you set your mind to without limitation, how you spend your time becomes a spiritual consideration. How you spend your time becomes a spiritual consideration because you could be doing something. If you want to end hunger, end hunger. What's stopping you? Bill Gates is actually going to end malaria. He's going to do it because he had the tenacity to generate the resources and because he has a mind that allows him to work on the infrastructure and figure out how to actually solve that problem. Do not, under any circumstances, make Bill Gates or anyone else extraordinary to let yourself off the hook. Don't do it. Don't sell yourself short. And this is where I see people go wrong all the time. They look at somebody who's amazing and they say, well, they're just naturally gifted. I could never do that. You couldn't do it because you believe you can't. And because you believe you can't, you don't start putting in the work. Michael Jordan got cut from his high school basketball team. He wasn't exactly showing all the promise in the world. My own mother, when I left for college, quietly assumed I was going to fail and didn't admit that for years. I showed no early signs of promise. I actually have a version of this talk where I show photos from my childhood and people are like, yeah, you just look stupid. And it's true. I used to dress like a clown, and I mean that almost literally. So my waist was size 36, and I wore size 54 pants. I wore literal jester hats. I had one of those big chains that connected to my belt. I had shoulder length hair. I did not exactly look the part, and I didn't take myself seriously. It really is a game of transformation. It really is a game of understanding that you can become something. So even though I didn't start with the requisite skills, even though I wasn't a born entrepreneur, which is why I start this tale with that, even though I wasn't a born entrepreneur, I could acquire and did acquire the skills that were needed to execute. It is a very long road. that leads you here. Right now, most entrepreneurs in the world are thinking about one thing: winning a championship ring.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag Believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome. For 10 more amazing rules from Brendan Burchard, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
You have to find what feels good for you. What feels good for me, as an example, a calm, slow morning. I'm pretty dumb in the morning. I'm slow to rouse in the morning. I like to